Hey everybody, I'm Danny,
And I'm Andrea.
and we are the voice of the meeple. It has been way too long, so apologies if you've been sitting there. I know everybody's just been sitting there refreshing, waiting for our next video.
We're back.
Our thousands of fans. We're back, and we're reviewing for you today Pax Pamir. Really cool game. We're really excited to tell you our thoughts about it because we love it.
Yeah.
Just spoiler alert, we love it. you can end the video because that's the whole thing now. So yeah, what we like about Pax Pamir. So yeah, just some backstory on this. Pax Pamir is a game about the Great Game in Afghanistan in the 1800s, and I had a weird obsession with this during grad school. I actually got this book called Return of a King by William Dalrymple. William Dalrymple came to the University of Washington while I was working on my grad degree and gave a talk about this. And just so you know, my grad degree wasn't in anything related to this. I had a weird obsession with this. So I got the book, went and listened to his talk about it, went through the book. I've read it multiple times now. Was fascinated by this whole era. And so it was when I heard there was a game about it, I had to check it out. So kind of the main thing about this game is it is a tableau builder. So you're getting cards that represent different people involved in the Great Game or different areas of the Great Game. And one of the central themes is there was Britain, there was Russia, and there were the Afghan nationalists all kind of fighting for control of Afghanistan. But you're not playing any of those three factions. They exist in the game and they're represented by these really cool little blocks that go out on the board, but you don't play as any of them. You are kind of representing like a group of Afghans, and you're allying yourself with these factions throughout the game. You have this little dial, and you're gonna be choosing at the start of the game who you're loyal to, and it can switch throughout the game. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
But that's basically the game in a nutshell. Let's get into what we like and dislike about it.
All right. One of the things that I love about this game is the design. The mat is fabric that you unfurl onto the table. It's got really beautiful, intricate designs around the border, even on the point trackers. The coins are gorgeous and engraved. The cards have illustrations and a little bit of history about each event, which is really interesting to read, and each character. It's clearly laid out. It's just a really beautifully put together game. I also really like how the cards connect to the map. In a typical card-based game, like Dominion or Seven Wonders, it's very abstract. There isn't necessarily a clear idea of what you're building, but here the action that you do are played out on the map in general, and so you can kind of see as the armies build, or as the roads build, or as you're gaining influence in a tribe. The map is divided into regions of Afghanistan, and each card is connected to that region, and your ability to do those actions plays into what's going on the map, so it feels very tied together, and you can have a clear sense of what's happening as the game goes on, and it's really interesting because of that.
Yeah, definitely my favorite thing about this game, like I mentioned earlier, are the factions. It's just a really cool dynamic that I haven't seen in strategy games like this. Usually it's in social deduction, right? Having factions and sharing a faction with other people. So yeah, you could have 2 or 3 people all allied with the British, someone else is with the Russians, someone else is with the Afghans. So and then you'll switch throughout the game. There are multiple ways you can switch factions. So just those choices of when do I bail on a faction, when do I join the bandwagon because that faction's looking really good, and you get points based off of who's most loyal to that faction too. For the most part, there's an exception, but so that's just a really cool dynamic. And yeah, just speaking of victory points, it's another thing I really like about this game. You're not accruing victory points throughout the game. There are key moments called dominance checks, which divide out the points. And they're huge. It creates a lot of excitement because those are big events. There could be just one. The game could be over after one. But a lot of the time there are 2 or 3 or possibly 4 of them. But generally there are going to be 2 different ways that you get points. One is if there's one faction that is dominant, meaning they have more than anybody else of different blocks on the board. And then whoever is loyal to that faction, the dominant faction, will get points based off how loyal they are.
Yeah.
But if no faction is dominant, then it's going to be a secondary metric based off of how many of your cylinders you have out. Those are representing tribes that are loyal to you and
Yeah.
spies that you have out on other people's cards. So just kind of, if someone has a lot of cylinders out, for instance, they're probably not going to really be helping their faction. They have an incentive to
keep it balanced.
Yeah, keep it balanced so that they can get the most points from a failed dominance check.
Yeah.
So there's lots of interesting stuff with those. Another thing is after a dominance check, you clear all the blocks off the board. So it's kind of a clean slate, which can hurt if you've put a ton of effort into getting all your blocks out there. But it's also just a really cool way of, it's a blank slate after each dominance check. You never feel like you're out of the game.
Yeah.
In our last game, we leapfrogged the whole time. I took an early lead on the first dominance check, Andrea took the lead in the next dominance check, and then I won off the third dominance check. So it's really cool, those key moments in the game.
Yeah.
Another thing I just really like is the theme. Like I said, it's something dear to me anyway. But there's a lot of really cool ways that the cards and just the gameplay tie into that theme. One example, like I said, you can have spies out on cards, on your own cards, on other people's cards.
Yeah.
And things will happen. You can have battles on these cards where your spies are kind of fighting. You can also betray or assassinate a card. And if that card has a certain symbol on it of your faction, that means it can be a prize for that faction that you're loyal to.
It's like a political target.
Yeah, like they don't like that guy, you can take him out. And that's a way of building your loyalty to that faction is by assassinating people. Pretty cool. Assassination can be cool. Alright, so now for some things we dislike.
Sure. If you've watched any of these videos, you'll know that I'm not a huge fan of luck. And in a game like this, where there's a deck of cards, you're not using all the cards every game, and the order that they come out matters, luck plays in. There are times where the card that you need is just not going to be out there, or the one that you desperately wanted is going to come out when it's not your turn. And I'm not a fan, but I can understand how it keeps the game interesting. It's definitely more of a game, it's not about laying it out from the beginning and following a plan to the end. It's about how quickly can you adapt to what's out there every turn and best take advantage of it, especially with the blank slate idea, which is not my cup of tea, but I mean, be advised. And then there are a lot of moving parts going on, different actions that you can take, different pieces you need to move, the idea of the cards being connected to the map, and we have found that it's a little bit, you can forget little details. And you have to be very careful and pay attention as you're taking your turn. You can't just knock your turn out and pass to the next person. You have to be clear about, this is what I'm doing and how does that affect your tribes. And that also means that other players around the table have to be paying attention when it's your turn so that you can interact and have that clear. And that's something that you don't always have in a strategy game. We have to just get adapted to that.
Yeah. I mean, for example,
I wasn't going to bring it up, but go on.
Yeah, it's just easy to miss things. So in our last game, I won, and it was a pretty cool victory. Like I said, I came from behind. It was the last dominance check. It was exciting. I was super proud of that. But I had taken a picture of the end game state, for bragging rights, and I posted it on our Instagram.
Yes.
Looking at it later, I realized the dominant suit at the end of the game was military. One consequence of military being the dominant suit is everything in the market is double the price. And I had won by purchasing the dominance check, and it was all the way out. So it would have cost me 10 coins to do. I honestly have no idea if I had 10 coins. I don't know if I purchased that legally or not. I did have a lot of coins, but I don't think I had 10. So it's easy to miss little things like that. Yeah.
Maybe that's just us.
We're dum-dums. We would play some complex games, so we're no stranger to complexity in games. But it just seems like there's a lot you have to be paying attention to, especially with other players.
Yeah.
The region matters on a card when you're playing it, because if someone's controlling that region, you have to pay them a bribe for playing a card in their region.
So you just gotta pay attention and keep track.
Yep.
Yeah.
Lots of things like that. For me, really, I think the biggest thing that is a pain point for me is just how much gotcha dynamics there are in this. Take that. It's a very aggressive game, and it can be harsh. You get your cards assassinated. There's an overthrow rule where if you lose a certain type of card, it will cascade to losing pieces on the map. And yeah, that can hurt a lot, and it happens a lot, especially in a 2-player game. There's no reason to work together because there's just 2 of you. So everything you do is going to be targeting the other person, and there are lots of ways to target people. With more players, it's toned down a little bit because you're going to be working with certain people at certain times, and so it doesn't feel as personal. But in a 2-player game, yeah, you're going to be just taking each other out. So if you like that dynamic in games, this is a great game for that. Kind of tied into that is the first time we played 2-player. To mitigate that, there is a Automa, it's called the Wakan player, that you can play with. So we did that. We're not huge fans of Automa players in general, so just a caveat on this. But yeah, we didn't love it, and I would just prefer to play 2-player instead of with a third computer player. Wakan is basically just random actions each turn. That's what it feels like.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of, I'm terrible at poker, but I've heard people that are good at poker feel like when you play with someone who's never played before, it can be really frustrating because they make really illogical choices that are just random, right? And it's hard to play against. That's what it felt like. It was just, I would go and do things that made sense. Andrea would go and do things that made sense, and then we get a player that just like is doing random stuff on the board, and then you're like, how could I plan for that?
Right.
So it was a little frustrating. But if you do really like solo play and you don't mind an Automa player, it actually was not super difficult to play with.
That's true. It was easy to let it do its random actions.
Yeah. I've been intimidated by other Automa, like the one for sides, just because it just seems intimidating with how much there is to do, and you already use so much mental space in doing a strategy game that I don't want to have to be putting tons of mental space into controlling the Automa as well. Right. And this one was actually pretty easy to use. Yeah. So, those are our thoughts on Pax Pamir. Overall, love it. So it is a great game. Can't wait to play with more players. Once we're not afraid of getting sick from them or getting them sick. Maybe we're the diseased ones. I don't know. But stay safe out there, everybody. Happy holidays.
Bye.
All right. Hey, everybody. I'm Danny.
Whoops.
Yeah, Pax Pamir is a game that is something. All right. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Dead
Pax
grandma.
Pamir, dead grandma. My grandma is dead.
No, that's just funny now.
Hey, everybody.
I'm not gonna say anything. I'll just do
I was waiting. I was waiting for her. That was a test.
You got this.
It's been a while.
Yeah, feels rusty.